Hello everyone, my name is Shana Beksinski and I'm the Adult Program Specialist at the Waynesboro Library. I thought it'd be fun and relaxing to start an adult story time every Friday night. So this Friday, I am going to be reading a short story out of Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis and Other Stories. The short story that I'm going to be reading is called A Country Doctor. I was in a most awkward predicament. I needed to leave at once on an urgent journey. A seriously ill patient was waiting for me in a village 10 miles away. A heavy snowstorm filled the wide interval between him and me. I had a carriage, light, with large wheels, perfectly suited to our country roads. Wrapped in my fur coat, my instrument bag in my hand, I was already standing in the yard ready to go. But I lacked a horse. A horse. The previous night, my own horse had died as a result of overwork in this glacial winter. My maid was now running all over the village trying to borrow a horse, but it was hopeless. I knew, and with more and more snow piling up on me, becoming more and more immobile, I stood there aimlessly. The maid showed up at the gate alone, swinging her lantern. Naturally, who would lend his horse for such a ride? I walked across the yard once again. I could see no possibility. Distracted, tormented, I kicked at the ramshackle door of the pig pen, which hadn't been used for years. It opened and swung back and forth on its hinges. Warmth and a smell like that of horses came out of it. A murky stable lantern was swinging by a rope inside. A man, crouching in the low shed, showed his candid, blue-eyed face. "Shall I hitch up?" he asked, creeping out on all fours. I could think of nothing to say, and only stooped down to see what else was in the pen. The maid stood next to me. "People don't know what they've got available in their own house," she said, and we both laughed. "Hey there, brother. Hey there, sister," called the groom, and two horses, powerful animals with strong flanks, their legs drawn up tight to their bodies, lowering their well-formed heads like camels, slid out of the door one after the other solely by twisting their bodies to and fro, and occupied the doorway completely with not an inch to spare. But immediately they stood up on tall legs, their bodies steaming with dense vapor. "Help him," I said, and the willing maid ran to hand the groom the carriage harness. But the moment she has reached him, the groom embraces her and shoves his face against hers. She yells out and escapes over to me. 2 rows of teeth have left their red marks on the girl's cheek. "You beast," I shout ferociously. "Would you like to feel my whip?" But I instantly recall that he's a stranger, that I don't know where he has come from, and that he's volunteering to help me when all the rest are failing me. As if he knew my thoughts, he isn't vexed by my threat, but still busy with the horses, merely turns once to face me. "Get in," he then says, and truly everything is in readiness. I observe that I have never before handled such a beautiful team, and I get in cheerfully. "I'll do the driving. You don't know the way," I say. "Sure," he says. "I'm not going along at all. I'm staying with Rosa." "No," yells Rosa, with a true foreboding that her fate is inevitable. She runs into the house. I hear the door chain rattle as she draws it tight. I hear the lock snap shut. I watch, as in addition, she turns off all the lights, first in the vestibule and then racing through the rooms, so she won't be found. "You're coming along," I say to the groom, "or I'm giving up the trip, no matter how urgent it is. I have no wish to hand the maid over to you as fare for the ride." "Giddy up," he says, and claps his hands. The carriage is swept away like a piece of wood in a current. I can still hear the door of my house cracking and splintering as the groom assaults it. Then my eyes and ears are filled with a rustling wind that penetrates all my senses uniformly. But even that lasts only a moment, because as if my patient's farmyard opened up directly in front of the gate of my own yard, I am already there. The horses are standing calmly. The snowfall has ended. Moonlight all around. The parents of the patient rush out of the house, his sister after them. They practically lift me out of the carriage. I can't make out any of their confused talk. In the sick room, the air is barely breathable. The stove, which hadn't been tended to, is smoking. I intend to open the window, but first I want to see the patient. Then, with no fever, not cold, not warm, with expressionless eyes, without a shirt, the boy raises himself up under the feather bed, embraces my neck, and whispers in my ear, "Doctor, let me die." I look around. No one has heard. His patients are standing in silence, bending forward in expectation of my medical opinion. The sister has brought a chair for my bag. I open the bag and look through my instruments. The boy continues to grope toward me from his bed in order to remind me of his request. I take hold of some tweezers, examine them in the candlelight, and put them down again. Yes, I think blasphemously. In such cases, the gods come to your aid. They send the missing horse because of the urgency. They add a second one. In their bounty, they then grant you the groom. It is only then that I think of Rosa again. What am I to do? How can I rescue her? How can I pull her out from under that groom when I am 10 miles away from her and unimaginable horses are harnessed to my carriage? Those horses, which somehow have now loosened the reins and in some unknown way have opened the windows from outside. Each one has thrust its head in through a window and, heedless of the family's outcry, is scrutinizing the patient. I'll ride right back, I think, as if the horses are inviting me to go, but I allow the sister, who believes I am numb from the heat, to take off my fur coat. A glass of rum is prepared for me. The old man pats me on the shoulder. The surrender of this treasure of his justifies that familiarity. I shake my head. I would grow ill within the old man's circumscribed way of thinking. For that reason alone, I refuse the drink. The mother stands by the bed and entices me over. I obey, and while a horse neighs loudly at the ceiling, I place my head on the chest of the boy, who shivers at the touch of my wet beard. What I know is confirmed. The boy is healthy, with somewhat poor circulation, glutted with coffee, by his anxious mother, but healthy so that the best thing would be to shove him out of bed. But I'm not out to improve the world, and I let him lie there. I'm an employee of the district government, and I do my duty to the hilt, to the point where it's almost too much. Though badly paid, I'm generous and helpful to the poor. I still must take care of Rosa, then the boy may be right, and I too shall die. What am I doing here in this endless winter? My horse is dead, and there's no one in the village who will lend me his. I have to find my team in the pig pen. If by chance they weren't horses, I'd have to drive with sows. That's the way it is, and I nod at the family. They know nothing about it, and if they knew, they wouldn't believe it. Writing prescriptions is easy, but otherwise communicating with people is hard. Well, this seems to be the end of my call here. Once again, I've been annoyed for nothing. I'm used to that. With the help of my night bell, the whole district tortures me. But having to give up Rosa too, this time, that beautiful girl who has lived in my house for years and whom I scarcely noticed, that sacrifice is too great, and I must somehow square it temporarily in my own mind through sophistries if I'm not to make an all-out attack on this family, because even with the best will in the world, they can't give me back Rosa. But as I am closing my bag and signaling to have my coat brought over, as the family stands there together, the father sniffing at the glass of rum in his hand, the mother, whom I have most likely disappointed, what do the people expect of me? Biting her lips tearfully, and the sister waving a blood-soaked towel, I am somehow ready to admit, on certain conditions, that the boy is perhaps ill after all. I go over to him. He smiles at me as I approach, as if I were bringing him, say, the most invigorating soup. Oh, now both horses are neighing. The noise, ordained by some lofty powers, is probably meant to facilitate my examination. And I find, yes, the boy is ill. On his right side, around the hip, a wound as large as the palm of one's hand has opened up. Pink, in many shades, dark as it gets deeper, becoming light at the edges, softly granular, with irregular accumulations of blood. Wide open as the surface entrance to a mine. That's how it looks from some distance. But close up, a complication can be seen as well. Who can look at it without giving a low whistle? worms as long and thick as my little finger, naturally rose-colored, and in addition spattered with blood, firmly attached to the inside of the wound, with white heads and many legs, are writhing upward into the light. Poor boy, there's no hope for you. I have discovered your great wound. You will be destroyed by the flower on your side. The family is happy. It sees me active. The sister tells it to the mother to the father to a few guests who are entering the open door through the moonlight on tiptoe, balancing with outstretched arms. Will you save me? The boy whispers with a sob, completely dazzled by the life in his wound. That's how the people are in my area, always asking the doctor for the impossible. They've lost their old faith. The priest sits home and picks his vestments to pieces one after another, but the doctor is supposed to accomplish everything with his gentle surgical hands. Well, have it any way you like. I didn't offer my services. If you misuse me for religious purposes, I'll go along with that too. What better can I ask for? An old country doctor robbed of my maid. And they come, the family and the village elders, and they undress me. A school choir led by their teacher is standing in front of the house and singing an extremely simple setting of these words. Undress him, then he will cure, and if he doesn't cure, then kill him. It's only a doctor. It's only a doctor. Then I'm undressed and my fingers in my beard. I look at the people calmly with head bowed. I am completely composed and superior to them all, and remain so, too, even though it doesn't help me, because now they take me by the head and feet and carry me into the bed. They lay me against the wall on the side where the wound is. Then they all leave the room. The door is closed. The singing dies away. Clouds pass in front of the moon. The bedclothes lie warmly on top of me. The horses' heads in the window openings waver like shadows. Do you know, I hear, spoken into my ear, I don't have much confidence in you. You just drifted in here from somewhere. You didn't come on your own 2 feet. Instead of helping, you're just crowding me out of my deathbed. I'd like most of all to scratch your eyes out. Right, I say, it's a disgrace. But I'm a doctor, you see. What should I do? Believe me, it's not easy for me either. Am I supposed to be contented with that excuse? Oh, I guess I must. I'm always forced to be contented. I came into the world with a fine wound. That was my entire portion in life. My young friend, I say, your mistake is this. You don't have the big picture. I, who have already been in all sick rooms far and wide, tell you your wound isn't that bad. Brought on by 2 hatchet blows at an acute angle. Many people offer their sides and scarcely hear the hatchet in the forest, let alone having it come closer to them. Is it really so, or are you fooling me in my fever? It's really so. Take a government doctor's word of honor into the next world with you. And he took it and fell silent. But now it was time to think about how to save myself. The horses still stood faithfully in their places. Clothing, fur coat, and bag were quickly seized and bundled together. I didn't want to waste time getting dressed. If the horses made the same good time as on the way over, I would, so to speak, be jumping out of this bed into mine. Obediently, a horse withdrew from the window. I threw the bundle into the carriage. The fur coat flew too far. It was barely caught onto a hook with one sleeve. Good enough. I leaped onto the horse, the reins loosely trailing along, one horse just barely attached to the other, the carriage meandering behind, the fur coat bringing up the rear in the snow. Giddy up and look lively, I said, but the ride wasn't lively. As slowly as old men we proceeded across the snowy waste. For a long time there resounded behind us the new but incorrect song of the children. Rejoice, O patience, the doctor has been put in bed alongside you. Traveling this way, I'll never arrive home. My flourishing practice is lost. A successor is robbing me, but it will do him no good, because he can't replace me. In my house, the loathsome groom is rampaging. Rosa is his victim. I don't want to think of all the consequences. Naked, exposed to the frost of this most unhappy era, with an earthly carriage and unearthly horses. I, an old man, roam about aimlessly. My fur coat is hanging in back of the carriage. but I can't reach it, and no one among the sprightly rabble of my patients lifts a finger to help. Betrayed! Betrayed! Having obeyed the false ringing of the night bell just once, the mistake can never be rectified. I hope you all enjoyed the short story. If you have any suggestions of any short stories that you would like me to read, just put them in the comments below. Thanks, and have a great Friday night.